Welcome everyone. Thanks for attending our webinar. This webinar is part of Keene Energy Week and presented by the City of Keene, New Hampshire Small Business Development Center, or SBDC, New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority, or Cdfa. This webinar was also supported by the Greater Keene and Peterborough Chamber of Commerce and Eversource. I'm Zach Luse, founder and CEO of Paragon Digital Marketing in Keene. I'll tell you more about myself and my business later because I'll be presenting one of the business success stories in a few moments. And if my slides will change, there we go. Today we're going to tell 3 success stories of businesses that have worked with Cdfa and or SBDC to complete their energy projects. We hope you'll come away inspired with ideas to make your own business more energy efficient and reach out to SBDC and Cdfa to make your energy dreams come true. We'll start with a quick introduction of Cdfa, then I'll tell Paragon's success story, and then SBDC will introduce themselves and some of the services they offer, followed by 2 success stories from Life is Sweet and Goose Bay Lumber. We'll wrap up with a Q&A at the end so you can ask all your questions at the end. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Scott Maslansky from Cdfa.
Great, thanks, Zach. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Maslansky, so I direct our Clean Energy Finance program at Cdfa. I'll give you a very brief overview just to introduce ourselves. Cdfa is a statewide community and economic development entity that focuses exclusively on New Hampshire. And in the next slide, we provide grants, loans, and state tax credit equity. Our staff provides a lot of technical assistance to prospective applicants from communities, from nonprofit organizations, and from for-profit businesses. And we work with applicants to help understand their projects, align that project with our own funding and financing that's available, and other potential sources. Next slide. So I focus on our clean energy programs, and we have 2 main areas, and one is our energy grants to help entities of all kinds assess their energy needs, and then our clean energy financing so that we can help to finance those projects with low interest financing. And that could be any type of energy efficiency project or renewable energy project. I provide direct energy technical assistance, sort of initial TA before an auditor might come in. And then also on the funding and financing side of things. And with that, I will reintroduce Zach from Paragon Digital. And I'll just mention businesses often come to Cdfa or SBDC, questions about funding and financing. And so it's really important that we help you understand the resources that are available to you. Zach will help describe that. He completed a very ambitious project that you see there in the background, with input and incentives from several different sources. Back to you, Zach.
Thanks, Scott. So again, I'm Zach Luse. I founded Paragon in 2012, and we're a digital marketing agency in Keene. We've grown to a team of 10 over the past 9 or so years. One of our biggest challenges as we've grown is finding office space in Keene that had good, reliable internet. Being a digital marketing agency, that was kind of a requirement. We looked at a lot of office spaces, and many of them could get internet, but the cost estimates to get fiber to some of those buildings was sometimes as much as like $28,000, which just didn't make sense as a renter to invest that kind of money into getting internet to a space that you weren't going to stay in long term. So in 2018, I purchased an old church. It's an 11,000 square foot church just off Central Square in Keene. It was built in 1869. It's a Keene landmark on the National Register of Historic Places. It had sat vacant for 10 years. It was a drafty, windy place where the wind was really just blowing through the building when I bought it. And it was heated with a huge oil boiler that burned several gallons of fuel per hour. The heating costs alone were the biggest hurdle to make it a financially viable space. it would be pretty hard to burn that much oil and support the building with my business. And I'm pretty sure most people thought I was pretty crazy for for buying this building, but it's a beautiful old space, and I'll tell you how we overcame those heating costs. I did a lot of research up front, getting to know the building, and started coming up with a plan, but I quickly realized I needed some expert help. I started talking to different organizations around the state and connected with Scott at Cdfa. Scott got us set up with an energy audit. Cdfa can provide grants for up to 75% of the energy audit for a small business. And that energy audit really served as a roadmap to help me decide which things we wanted to do to make the most financial sense for the building. So one of the first things we did was put a solar array on the roof. We needed a new roof, so we got a new roof at the same time, installed 105 solar panels. It's a 33.6 max kilowatt system. And we were able to finance the roof and the solar through Cdfa with a low interest loan. And we added a lot of insulation, truckloads of insulation. We blew it into the ceilings and the floors. Had a lot of help from friends and called in a lot of favors. It was a big project. We also put new windows in. The old windows were the original windows downstairs in our space. You couldn't open them. They were nailed shut, and they had plexiglass on both sides, and the wind just blew right through them. Made a huge difference in just the comfort of the space and appearance. The next thing we did, one thing the energy audit told us, and one of my things I learned through Cdfa and the energy auditors they connected me with, was that it didn't matter how much insulation we added. It didn't matter how much solar we put on the roof. This just wasn't going to work unless we sealed the space up. We air sealed and stopped those drafts. The wind really was just literally blowing through the space when we bought it. So if you have all that insulation and the wind is just blowing all the heat right back out the building, it's not gonna help. It's not gonna work. So we contacted a company called Aerobarrier that uses a new technology that basically uses little mini snow guns that blow like a caulk-like substance into the air, and it floats around. Then they pressurize the space with a blower door, and then when the Aerobarrier finds the areas where the air is leaking out, it speeds up and sticks to the sides of the hole and eventually fills the hole. This worked amazingly well for an old building like this with so many gaps and cracks and holes in the brick and plaster. This was the results from that process. And the before here, we had about 8 air changes per hour in the space. And this was after going around with spray foam and putting the new windows in and insulating. It was far worse when we started the project. But what you can see here is that over the 3 to 4 hours of air sealing with Aerobarrier, we reduced our air leakage by 87%, which is huge. And then we added heat pumps. These we were able to get Eversource rebates for. They pull heat from the outside air down to -30 degrees. So it works like the reverse of an air conditioner. Super energy efficient, and is saving us thousands of gallons in heat and oil. And the results are a beautiful, comfortable office space that we're located in here. Just for how the numbers look, our previous office space, the expenses and rent were about $3,000 a month for about 3,500 square feet. Before I bought this building, I was looking for a larger office that was better suited for us in the 5,000 square foot range. And I was looking at paying at least $5,000 a month for that space. Some spaces were even more expensive than that. And then we had to fit up the space to make it work for us. This space with all the loans and expenses, I'm around $4,000 a month. And we're currently using 5,000 square feet, but we have 11,000 square feet to grow into. So the numbers worked out really, really well. And at the end of, I guess it's about 7 or 8 years now, my expenses will drop when the loans are done being paid off for the solar and the energy improvements. My expenses will drop to somewhere around $1,000 a month. So it's one of the best investments I've really made in my business. It's going to be, I traded paying rent for owning solar panels in an energy efficient space. And once those loans are paid off, I have so much more cash flow to work with. The results for the solar power and electricity, I was trying to find something here to explain what 80 megawatts of power is, because that's kind of a, what does that number even mean? The best number I could really find to explain that was the average house in the US uses about 10 megawatts of power for an entire year. So since September of 2019, when we turned on the solar panels, we've produced enough power to power 8 US homes for an entire year. We've only used about 60 megawatts of that 80 megawatts we've produced. The other 20 megawatts have been put back into the grid. So we've been able to heat and cool the space with the heat pumps and power all of our operations. The only expenses we have is a little bit of demand charges, which even out after all the solar RECs and everything. Not only have we created an energy efficient space, it's a super comfortable space. I don't have shoes on right now. It's really comfortable. There could be a blizzard outside and we wouldn't even know it. There's a fire station across the street that we rarely ever hear. The combination of the insulation and the air sealing has just made it a really great space. We've also saved an amazing building that probably would have been demolished. There were 2 churches across the street that were very similar to this one that were torn down in the 60s. And this one had been sitting empty for 10 years, so it was probably headed to the same fate. Now it's a financially viable space because it doesn't have those huge energy costs. It's comfortable. It has a lot of potential uses after we're done with it. So hopefully it'll be here for 150 years more. And then I will turn it over to SBDC, Andrea.
Thank you, Zach. That was an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. For some of you, you've already heard of the SBDC, and for others, here we go. We are the state's leading technical assistance business advising resource, and we provide business advising and education for New Hampshire businesses. We have 10 advisors at this time that are located around the state to help businesses in every corner of the state. And our advising is very individualized to the company who's requesting our service. We're confidential and there is no charge. And we can provide it at no charge because we are funded by our funding partners, which are the Small Business Administration, the state of New Hampshire, and we're also supported by the university. And we're actually, our main office is in the business school, Peter T. Paul College on the UNH campus in Durham. So we had a very busy year last year. I just wanted to share with you our impact numbers. We spoke to or trained over 7,000 entrepreneurs across the state. And how did we help them? Well, we helped them raise capital. We supported their, their businesses, which represented about 6,000 jobs. And we helped them create over 9 million in sales. And so this does bring economic impact to the state. And according to these statistics, we brought about $166 million of revenue into the state. And we're very proud of that. And we are here for you also. So please don't hesitate to call on us. We do all kinds of business advising on all topics for your business. And if we don't know the answer, we have advisors that might be an expert in that particular topic. Each of us has a area of focus, and mine happens to be sustainability, and that's what we're talking about today. Next slide, please. So the Business Sustainability Program of SBDC helps your business think about its impact in the environment and in the community. And we do that by focusing on these three things. We want to reduce your environmental footprint, whether you're a manufacturer or a retailer, a restaurant, a lumber mill. Everyone has an environmental footprint. That's the first thing we might talk about. We want to make sure that you have a safe workplace for your employees because you care about them, and it's very expensive and very costly if an employee does get hurt in the workspace. So we provide resources to help you improve that. And lastly, we are focused on helping you save energy because that is in the crosshairs of environmental footprint and your bottom line. It's energy is expensive. It's something you need to use every month, and you don't want to be wasteful with that resource because it really impacts your bottom line. And so by helping you determine how you can become more energy efficient, that provides significant impact to your business. And SBDC and Cdfa are some of the resources that you should call on to do that. And so today we're going to talk about two small business examples. First, I'm going to introduce Life is Sweet. Tracy Gunn is the founder. She started her candy and cupcake store in 2007, and she's located in downtown Keene. If you haven't been there, you should stop by and check out. It's really a sweet place to visit. And what's interesting about Tracy's story is she was able to save money on her energy bill without spending any money at all. And with that, I'm going to let Tracy tell you more.
All right, thank you, Andrea. So Life is Sweet. We started, like we said, in 2007, and we moved a few times around downtown Keene. At one point we added cupcakes to our endeavors, and so we couldn't do it where we were. So then we wound up with two locations, one up on Washington Street, one downtown under the Colonial Theater at the time. And then I had this opportunity to combine the stores. And it was scary to make that jump to this big 2,000 square foot space. But I thought, well, I'll condense labor, I'll condense energy, I'll condense, confusion with the customers about, when we're open, when we're not. So we just thought it would streamline everything. And so we moved to downtown, right on Central Square, next to the big white church. And the first month, I got a scary bill and a call. And so basically, I thought prior, I'm spending about 150 at one place, 150 at the other, combine them. Okay, maybe I'll save because I'm not, running lights in two places and things like that. And all of a sudden, I got this first bill and it was over $1,000. And I was like, how is this even possible? And so you know, again, I moved all my equipment to the one space, right? So freezers and ovens and mixers and things like that. And so I was like, you know, we're next to the Stage, which is a pretty popular restaurant. And I was like, I must be paying for their electric too. So we kind of did some research, and I reached out to the SBDC. I think it was Gary back then, or maybe it was Andrea, I'm not sure. But I was just so worried, like I can't afford, I mean, we're a candy store, you know. And so they set us up with, I think back then it was PSNH, and they did energy audits, right? So I kind of called, I complained, I said, there's no way it should be so. They came, they checked it out, and we did a walkthrough. And so that's where we're going to kind of talk about some of the suggestions they made. So first thing, I'd like to give a little bit of education. So as someone who had been running a business for 7-8 years, I had no sense of how they bill me, right? Other than if it was reasonable, I just paid it. So I'm going to share my screen quick and just show you my bill. Okay, I think somebody else has to stop sharing for me to be able to do that. I'm sorry. Okay, let's see. Let me do it. Ah, there we go. Okay, I'm going to share me. There we go. Sorry, I'm not as great at this. Okay, so I'm not sure if you can see. I hope you all can see my Eversource bill. So this was this past month. Okay, and here you are. Let me page down here. I think I can, oh, here it is. Sorry, my little pictures are there. Anywho, so, okay, you go down to the second page. So this was the enlightening part for me, is when the gentleman came from PSNH, he really explained that there are two parts of your bill. Maybe all of you know this, I didn't. So you have supply, right? And you have delivery. Okay, and so here, do you see this demand right underneath? It's not pointing. Oh, there we go. There's a little pointer. So under here, it says total demand use under the meter number here. Okay, so if you further, I wonder if I can move this. I'm sorry. There we go. Oh, perfect. Okay, so if we go down a little bit further, you'll see that this demand use is going to be right down here. It's under your delivery. Okay, I have another screen I can share it during questions, which breaks down how they get these numbers and how they set the rates. But in general, what the gentleman told me when he did my walkthrough is that PSNH or Eversource, they give you a flat rate up to 5. Okay, so my demand right now is 16.9 kilowatt. They give you up to 5 for free. Okay, so no extra charge for that. Anything after that, the way that they figure that out is they take any 20-minute window of your entire month and what your highest demand or highest draw. So for example, if I am baking, I have every light in the building on, I've got all my freezers plugged in, we have the AC running, everything that's pulling the biggest draw in a 20-minute window during the month is how they set the rate for the entire month. They don't care if it happened 1 time or 10 times. 1 time, that's what you're set at. So for me, my highest this month was 16. So when they first came to me and they did my evaluation, they said my draw that month was 21. Okay, and so that was enlightening to me. And so he said, okay, let's take a walk around and look. So you can decrease by adjustments, right? You can decrease by buying more energy efficient equipment. You can, as Zach talked about. So, but one of the things he said was, all right, let's take a look around. So we had old fluorescent lights in our building. We rent our space. We had so many lights, and each light bay had 4 bulbs, fluorescent. He said, just turning the lights on in the morning, you're up to 5 kilowatts, just lights. That's nothing else plugged in. And so he goes, that's your freebie. So everything else you do from there, right, you're going to go up from there. So we're never going to get down to that 5, which is okay. But he said, here's a suggestion. Do you need 4 light bulbs in each one? Over time, you can upgrade, get LED, you can do some other things. But in that space and time, a quick thing was take out half the bulbs. So if everyone had 4, put 2 in each. He said, you'll bring it down to about 3. So there we go. We immediately had some savings. He made suggestions about baking. So we don't bake all day. So we made it so we bake when we're not open. So all the lights are off in our store, right? The ice cream soft serve machine is not running when we're baking. The only lights are on are in our kitchen. So he made suggestions about ways that we could segment our day to spread out our usage. So we have a general rule here is that the ovens are not on a half hour before we open, because that's when we turn on our ice cream machines and all the lights, and we get the AC. We also turn off the AC when we're baking because that's counterproductive. So that was really enlightening for me. So if you come back to my bill here, so you see we were 16.9, this is 11.9. So if you figure that the math of that, it's minus the 5 that are free. So they're charging me at $11.69 based on my usage. So you can see here, we have that, but that same number is charged not just in one place, but 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 times whatever that number, they're going to multiply that out by all their other charges. So if you look, and I'm just going to kind of wrap it up, but hope this makes sense to everybody. It's hard when I can't hear you or see you. So here we are. So our supply was $243. Our delivery, $407. The delivery is the part we can somewhat control, right? We have to operate, we have to be open, we have to bake, we have to do things. But this number, which is really almost double what our usage is where you have a lot of room to play. Now, over time, we've installed, we've kept to the 2 bulbs per day, and then we've changed out some of them to be LED, which helps, right? So we've lowered some. We're working on a system with the AC unit because it's a big space and it's an old building, much like Zach talked about. So that is not ideal. I don't know. Oh, you can see on my next page here. So yeah, the winter time when we don't have the AC running, we're really different than we are about right now. We love Indian summer, but we're not with the energy bill. So, anyway, so I guess my main point, and again, this was just all educational for me, and then making adjustments based on that. It was a huge jump for me to go from 2 little stores where the rent was, I don't know, $1,000 for both of them to go to almost $2,000 to be in one space. I certainly was not prepared or capable of spending $1,000 a month on electric on top of that. And so it was really helpful for me to have them come, walk me through some simple things we can do, and then also to give me some long-term plans of like, okay, over time, you can get different freezers, you can get different lighting fixtures, you can have a different AC unit. We had this huge unit on the roof that would do all the heating and all the AC, and it was probably 30 years old. So we turned that off. And we bought like a window unit, believe it or not. And it's not always super cool in here, but it's way more efficient than the ginormous one on the roof. So I think that's the gist of it. But again, you can see from our first month and me having a minor heart attack of $1,000 to getting it down to like 650 is a nice amount of savings. So I don't know if that helps or not, but I'm gonna stop sharing.
That was wonderful. It was a great
you.
story. You did a great job describing it, and you know, you should give us a call. We can talk about how we can replace some of those lights. And you know, let me just also add that reading your energy bill is really important. It's a kind of a complicated thing if you don't understand the parts of it, and so I recommend that everybody take a good hard look at trying to understand you know, deciphering exactly how you're being billed for your energy. So our next story is Goose Bay Lumber, located in Chichester. And our speaker is Lydia West. Goose Bay is a family-owned business, and it was started in 1978. They have all types of lumber and have a niche market with exotic woods. It's really, lumber smells great, but her lumber yard is just beautiful. Some of these woods are just incredible. Everyone should go down and take a peek. Lydia's story is one of reinvestment into her business using energy efficiency and renewable energy as the focus. With that, I will let Lydia tell her story.
Good morning. Before I start into our energy story, I'd like to give you a little background on who we are. It always seems like you need to be a really big company to make big changes, and we are anything but a big company, but with help have achieved some big changes. In 1978, Carl Malstead bought pieces of a sawmill lying rusting in a field. He brought them to Chichester in several trips with his pickup truck, put all the pieces together, carved a sign, and Goose Bay Sawmill and Lumber was born. I joined the company after the birth of our first child in 1993. Together, Carl and I built the business to offer not only rough sawn lumber, but hardwood and exotics sourced both locally and from around the world. We currently stock over 70 species of hardwood and softwood. Although we divorced in 2002, we have continued to work together. As recently as 2018, we had just 3 employees, Carl, myself, and my stepson, Carl. We currently have 8 employees. The joke is that in order to work here, you need to either be part of the family or be named Mike. Coincidentally, the 2 employees not related to us are both named Mike. My role in the company has always been to do the quote unquote financial stuff. Carl Sr. is the machinery guy and handles all the activity in the sawmill and yard. Carl Jr. is our buyer and our retail guy. So as you see, we are not a big company. I reached out to the SBDC at the beginning of the pandemic. We had nearly gone under in the 2008 recession, and we really feared a repeat. Instead, the pandemic inspired hometown folks to try their hand at new projects, many involving wood. We were off to our then biggest year ever. Discussions with my SBDC advisor turned from damage control to capital investment in the business to well position us for future downturns, e.g. in case we experienced a post-pandemic slump. One of the many things we did was to schedule a level 2 energy audit of our retail barn. Andrea O'Brien brought in Chase Penoyer of Resilient Buildings to do the actual audit, and Lawrence from Energy LB Resources as a consult during the audit. Level 2 audits give suggested energy improvements as well as implementation costs and expected savings. Although this only applied to our retail barn, we toured our sawmill and what we call our pine barn, which houses our production planer, eye-dry kiln, and cabinet shop. With SBDC guidance, I applied for a Cdfa grant to offset the cost of the audit. Total cost of the audit was $3,870, less a grant of $2,902. So the total that Goose Bay paid was $968. It was during this tour that we brought up the pie in the sky idea of, gee, do you think we could ever be a solar powered sawmill? With much help from Energy LB, as well as from the SBDC, we moved forward with selecting the projects from the audit to tackle first, and also with getting installation proposals from 3 different solar companies. As you can imagine, all of these plans take financing. In the late 70s, Goose Bay's bank was a local commercial bank. We stayed with the same bank, which is now a large international commercial bank, totally mismatched to Goose Bay's needs. With guidance from SBDC advisor Hollis McGuire, we opened a generous LOC with Sugar River Bank. They are a small New Hampshire commercial bank with the flexibility and willingness to meet the needs of a small business like Goose Bay. Working with LB Resources and Unitil, we not only switched out old fluorescent lights to LEDs, but installed several new LED lights in dimly lit areas. Although we received no cash incentives for the new lights, we did receive incentives for old fixtures that were retrofit. The fixtures that you see in the photo lighting our retail barn are only 70 watts each. The fixtures we replaced were 324 watts each. Total savings just in the retail barn were 1,420 watts. The total cost of the lighting was $9,800 less incentives from Unitil of $3,700 for a net of $6,200. If we had only replaced existing fixtures, the reimbursement rate would have been about 50%. In the sawmill, we purchased a used electric motor. You can actually see it. It's the gray motor to the left of the saw head, and installed it ourselves, converting our power from diesel to electricity. When the solar panels go live, we will have a solar-powered sawmill. No rebates here, as the motor was used and the labor was ours. But we are now quieter, faster, and cleaner, soon to be less expensive, and that all feels really good. The jewel in our crown of energy improvements is the installation of the 2 solar arrays. After reviewing the 3 proposals we got, we elected to go with Revision Energy. The saying, "It takes a village," certainly applies to this process. The audit information was key, as it analyzed not only our current electrical needs, but estimated our future needs. This was integral to sizing the solar arrays. Sugar River Bank provided the funding and tailored the loan document to our needs. For example, knowing we were applying for grants, we are allowed to unlimited principal paydowns without penalty. Revision Energy has been a pleasure to work with at all levels. Unlike the other companies we talked to, Revision delayed the down payment process until after the USD REAP grant documents were filed. Any payments made prior to this filing are not eligible to be considered in the REAP grant process. I paid Revision a flat fee to prepare and file the REAP documents. By this arrangement, the entire cost of our project was eligible for consideration, and we actually were granted a REAP grant. Our solar arrays produce 66, or will produce 66 kilowatts of electricity. The total cost was $178,000. The REAP grant is $44,600, and we'll receive a New Hampshire grant of $13,320. With tax credits and depreciation in tandem with offset energy costs and favorable loan terms, our project will be net positive after year 1. As we move forward, we hope to continue to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. We are waiting for technology to catch up to be able to affordably meet our needs. I'd also like to thank the New Hampshire SBDC. The greatest advice I can give to any company is to listen to your advisor, and if at all possible, follow his or her advice.
Thank you. That's a great story. I think with that, there's definitely a recurring theme here with energy audits. So I think Scott has a couple slides here prepared to talk about energy audits a little bit. It's definitely, for me, it really was that roadmap to make those financial decisions and balance other things I wanted. Like the energy audit said, windows aren't a good investment, but as you saw from the picture, the windows that were there were not going to stay. So Scott's going to talk a little bit about how an energy audit works and how to balance those decisions.
Great, thanks, Zach. And those were some great presentations. It's always much better to hear directly from the businesses. So explain all of this. So that was, really wonderful information from each of the businesses that spoke. I'm going to dive a little bit into energy audits. I'll try to keep it, relatively quick so we have time for questions at the end. But I thought it's helpful to understand kind of the scope of energy audits. So it's important to think through when you do an energy audit. The considerations that an auditor will look at include, looking at your goals as a business. Are you looking to grow? Are you changing your space? Are you planning to change your equipment already? And conditions of your facility. Is it a landlord-tenant situation? Do you own the space? Does the space need a new roof? Is it leaking? Those are important considerations. What's the historic energy use? Do you have very high bills? As in the case of Life is Sweet. And comparing to similar buildings, what's the energy, if you own a retail shop, if you look at other retail shops in similar with similar weather conditions around the country, is your energy use per square foot similar, or is it very high? If you have a portfolio of buildings, this could help you choose which building to focus on or compare yourself to others. So in the output of an energy audit report, you'll get all of that information plus a series of recommended energy measures. You know, what are the energy upgrades that are being recommended for energy efficiency and potentially for renewable energy as well. And then a key part of the audit report will be a table that shows your estimated costs, energy and cost savings, and your payback. And that's what I wanted to dive into a little bit in the next slide. So the financial model is done a little bit differently with each auditor, but essentially it has the same components. The first one is the energy savings measures. And if you can click through these as I go through, that'd be great, Zach. So this is the things that you're planning to do to upgrade. So in this case, this is a very simplified one, but gives you an idea. There's a bunch of insulation and air sealing, roof insulation, conversion from an oil boiler to a heat pump, and then a solar installation. This is actually very similar to Zach's, but not the same one. Then you have the cost. And so this is the installed cost of each measure, and then followed by the annual savings. How much you expected to save in energy savings per year in this case. Next, you have the life of the measure. And this is one isn't often thought about, but how many years can you expect the equipment or work to be in reliable service, giving you savings over that period of time? It's important to note that you may not plan on having your business or staying in the space for 20 years. So you might have to adjust the calculations, of how much you'd save over time based on that. But that life of measure brings you to the next one, which is the total savings. Your annual savings times how long you'll be saving, given that particular measure, gives you the total. And the life of measure is kind of common across the industry. And that's where those numbers, come from. And the simple payback is simply, how many years of savings does it take to recoup your initial investment? This is what's used by many businesses to assess their investment. And it can be very helpful, except it really doesn't give you the whole story, because after you pay that back, that's when you really get your net savings, your icing on the cake, so to speak, your profit of those savings. We could call it, kind of a savings profit. So the investment gain is the last one there. And essentially what that is your total savings. So over the course of the life of that upgrade, minus the initial cost. It's sort of your net, you can call it your net profit there. Now the next, if you click one more, you'll see on this line, if I asked how many people would raise their hand and say that, they would definitely want to do this measure, I hope that from just the look here, none of you would say yes. The reason being, if you look, it's expected to last 15 years and it'll take you 20 years to pay back, and you actually have a negative investment gain. So you'd sound crazy for doing this. But it's one of the key points I want to get across here is this financial model is for energy savings based on a specific assumptions. And there's a lot of different information pertinent to your business that is not, listed in here. So for example, if you run an inn and you have rooms that you don't use because they're too hot in the summer, and then all of a sudden you want to put in cooling in that space, this estimate might include, the cost estimate might include that increasing, the amount of space. So you're improving your building in a way that's going to bring in additional revenue that's not listed here in this table. So you don't always want to get scared by that, when things don't look perfect in this table. And in addition, if you look at the bottom line there, the total, you can often look at the total package and say, I do want to do all of these measures for different reasons. If the total package looks good to me, if it makes sense for this investment, then that's what, you can go by. So you'll work on figuring out which pieces to do. And that brings me to the next slide. Go one more, which is what's missing from the numbers. So the first thing is maintenance savings. You saw in the sawmill some of those high bay lights. Well, if you didn't own a lift to get up to those lights and they were burning out a couple of years and you had to hire someone to rent a lift to come in and change those lights, that's going to cost a lot of money. or if your boiler needed work every few months because it was having issues, there's a lot of money not reflected in that financial model. The next thing is comfort. And you want to consider, again, if you didn't have cooling in your building and you switched to an air source heat pump, you're now getting an extra value, an extra benefit, which isn't included in the model, and you need to consider that. Next, you have health and safety. And of course, your employees or visitors to your space, if you want to make sure they have good air to breathe, good ventilation, or good lighting, if they're moving things around in a warehouse, you're talking about the potential costs of sick days or of safety issues. And those are values you need to consider in your financial model. And then finally, incentives. The reason why incentives aren't often listed in these financial models is because they change, and it might take you 6 months or a year to get to some of these projects, and they don't want to give you bad information. So the incentives are something that you talk to us or SBDC and work with the utility, work with USDA, our program, etc. And it's really important because something that used to have a 15-year payback after incentives might only be 8, 9, 10 years. So that's really what I wanted to get across to you, and to note that this is kind of the output from your energy audit, and I hope that that was helpful. Back to you.
Great, thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
So just in wrapping up, CDFA and SBDC can really help you identify where your opportunities are and read those energy bills and make sense of those energy audits and navigate all those incentives and financing. I've worked with both organizations and they've been immensely helpful with my business. Trying to do my project and run a business at the same time was quite a endeavor, and Scott really helped me navigate all of the confusing programs and incentives that were out there, and adding the historic element into it also complicated things in places. So it was definitely helped me make smarter decisions and guide me through the process and save me time so I could run my business. It's also, I mean, looking at all these numbers, for me, it's really making an investment in the future of your business, because when I pay off those, I keep going back to the renting versus owning analogy, because instead of paying Eversource and the oil company, I shifted spending that money on solar panels and insulation and things that will be paid off in 7 years. And once I get past that 7 years, my business will be much more resilient and have better cash flow and won't be susceptible to energy shortages and spikes in energy costs. There are a lot of different things you can do to save money and save energy, as you've seen today from the 3 stories. And SBDC and Cdfa are really there to help you with that process. Not only does SBDC provide energy and sustainability advice, they can help you with advice on growing your business around marketing and finances, and be a valuable resource to you. Cdfa can help you with the technical assistance. They can help you get money to pay for those energy audits, and then finance those projects that you decide you want to move forward with. So I hope some of these stories have inspired you to think about your own business and how you might be able to implement energy efficiency or renewable energy projects to make your business stronger and more resilient. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
And Zach, there was actually a question in the chat. Andrew was asking, whether the projects that we spoke of are taking advantage of the solar renewable energy certificates. And can you talk at all about your experience with that?
Yeah, for me, I believe I get about $1,000 a year in renewable energy credits. I've heard that it doesn't always work as seamlessly as mine, but my information is reported directly from the inverters to the organization that provides the renewable energy credits. Renewable energy credits are when other businesses buy those credits to offset things like fuel to fly their planes or other energy sources that they can't shift to renewable energy. So it varies a bit, but for me, it ends up covering the demand charges that I get in the winter running my heat pumps.
Great, and I don't know if Lydia is on and wanted to mention what BoostPay does, but oftentimes you can work with your solar provider who can introduce you to a, one of the several entities you can work with to, who helps to sell your renewable energy credits there.
Yeah, we haven't actually gotten to that part yet. Our panels aren't quite live. I expect they will be live in the next couple of weeks. So we still are going through that whole process.
Great, thank you.
And yeah, we can share, somebody's asking if we can share contact information for the different businesses. We can definitely do that, a follow-up. Someone's also asking, do the Keene businesses intend to participate in Keene's community power program? I certainly do. I don't know about Tracy. She may not even know about the community power plants. So Keene was one of the maybe the first city to develop a community power program, and it basically the city of Keene becomes the power provider. The bill and the delivery still come from Eversource, but that gives the city of Keene power, the ability to purchase more renewable energy and make their own decisions about where their power comes from. And for the city of Keene, we have the goal of switching all of our electricity to renewable sources by 2030. So that will definitely be a good step there. And the new laws make it an opt-out program, which makes it much more viable. So anybody who's using the default Eversource power will automatically be switched to Keene's community power program unless they opt out of it. And there'll be different tiers available in that, from my understanding, to decide how much you want to pay for extra renewable energy.
Zach, there was also a question about whether Cdfa or SBDC will be exploring electric vehicle adoption and charging options. And I'll say, actually, Andrea and I, both organizations are working with one business right now on, potential charging stations and looking into some of the funding and financing available. I know it's an area that, we're definitely interested in financing at Cdfa, especially if you're looking at fleet vehicles. If you own vehicles, if your business owns vehicles and is looking to do charging, that's an area that we'd like to support in financing. The energy auditors we work with, it's not necessarily all of their expertise, but there's definitely plenty of people in the state that work on this, and we could be, connecting you with the right resources if that's something that you're interested in.
Great. And there's another question asking to talk a little bit about the best way to monitor your energy usage and track your progress. I do this in several ways. The biggest one is just monitoring my solar production and my energy bill, my Eversource bill. I take that and I put it into a spreadsheet every month, so I know how much I've produced, how much I've used, how much I've paid to Eversource. It's just something I do every month so I can track. I had a similar issue to Tracy with demand charges when we started heating in the winter. I had replaced a gas water heater with a on-demand electric one, which uses less electricity than a regular electric water heater. But when it kicked on and the heat pumps were running at the same time, it would spike my energy usage, like when the dishwasher was running or something. And I ended up actually going backwards on that and replacing the water heater with an electric water heater that wasn't on demand. Kind of counterintuitive because it does use a little bit more power. But I learned that by installing an energy monitor that connects to my phone, and I could see when it would spike. And those are available on Amazon, or I think a lot of solar providers can help you with that, or electricians.
Zach, I'll note that Mary asked about if you're moving into a new space, what's the best way to start working toward an energy audit? And so connecting with Cdfa, SBDC, the utilities, we kind of all talk to each other. So if you reach out to us, it's helpful. I think SBDC and Cdfa are looking a little bit more broadly. And if there was another question too about who to go to first. If we think the utility is going to give you a better support for an incentive or for an audit, or it's a better loan, or then we'll send you to that location. We're not in competition. We're trying to give the most support to the business that we can. So kind of by talking to an SBDC or CDFA, we're looking a little more broadly at all the options for you. The utilities have great incentives, and will sometimes refer folks to us. Sometimes those audits, you have to know the difference between audits. So the utilities in a business situation are often focused on the fuel that they serve. So in Eversource territory, if you have oil heating, they're probably not going to look at weatherization or oil heating systems. If it's electric heating, then they'll look at it. So our audits will cover everything. Their audits may not always, but in some cases, certain programs are much better to go with the utility. So just contact one of us and get in touch with all of us, and it's probably the best way to go.
And if one challenge we had was our space sat vacant for 10 years, so there were certain programs where we couldn't look at previous energy usage. So if you are able to get energy bills from the previous tenant or previous owner, that may be helpful too.
Yeah, some of the programs require that if it's a change of use of a space, you might need several months of energy before you can apply for certain funding. So that's an important question to ask.
There's a question about the House Bill 549. I know that was revised at the last minute, so I don't know. The system benefits charge part of it was taken out, I believe. So I don't know if that impacts any of the energy efficiency programs or not.
Yeah, I mean that gets into that's still a moving target there, and I think for now it may impact a few areas. The piece about the commercial incentives has gone back in right now, so that's in good shape. But there's some other questions about the level of funding for our energy efficiency resource standard that may not be it's not as clear yet. So
it's also in process. It hasn't been passed.
Let's see, there were anything else you're seeing there? I'm pretty sure this
Scott,
will be shared.
Scott,
Yeah.
Hi, Scott. I had put in the chat that another way for businesses to save money is to get a different shop around for rates. Sometimes you can get a more competitive energy rate, electricity rate, but you have to really watch the terms of the contract. But that's another way that you can cut your energy bill. We didn't have an example of that today, but something to think about.
Using a competitive supplier and then looking if your community also has community power will have some impact there too. So,
great. I think that wraps up all the questions. And feel free to reach out to any of us if you come up with any questions afterwards. And I hope you'll all be inspired to come up with your own energy efficiency projects and reach out to CDFA and SBDC. Like I said a couple times now, they're a really invaluable resource for my business. I've used both organizations and really value their support and help.